Good morning, everybody. This is Ross Miller with a fake level of excitement and jubilation as we, not that I'm not excited about the podcast. It's just that I hurt my back here, Dr. Bourgeois. Here at the onset of the old school, it should not be surprising that we have back and hip pains and other things like that. Good morning, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Good morning, Herr Miller. It's exciting that you put your injuries out for all to see or hear, as it were.
This is an open forum. We must be willing to let down our guard and be vulnerable to the masses.
I don't think so. You describe what I call a floating injury as you hit a certain age, where it goes from one part to the other in a mysterious fashion.
Yes, they come and go with great regularity. So
that's it. Well, I feel like welcome back. We've been recording weekly, but we took about a week off. But we have a few in the bag, as they say.
Yes.
So we're
it's good to have options.
Yeah, it is, and we could just delete a few, and probably everyone would be happier.
Well, we're such timely folks. It may lose its shelf life. Who knows?
Could be. Well. Today's episode probably is timely because I was thinking about what would be fun. And
the baseball playoffs, kind of the jockeying of position for the wild card positions, or
doesn't everybody make the playoffs? Everybody gets an award.
So no, you're confusing that with Little League Baseball. It's not the same thing.
Okay, they have all these one-game series. I think that's the part people really like.
Well, the first one is a one-game series. You know, if you get a tiebreaker to get in, but. Let's not cheapen this, okay? It's America's pastime. It's America.
I know, but it's not a series. You can't have a series with one game. It's a plural. It's implied that you play multiple games in a series.
Well, the play-in game is just that. It's just a play-in game. But then after that, it's either a 5 or 7 game series.
But it's you might as well just have them flip a coin.
Oh God. What's wrong with you?
I don't watch it.
You're yanking my chain is what you're doing. So
no, I would never do such a thing. And you're in a weakened state because you started school this last week. I mean, you've been in school for weeks, it seems, preparing. Just what you said you wouldn't do. Then you're in your classroom every day and meeting with teachers. I know you have a leadership role, but you've been kind of chomping at the bit, I think, to get back in the classroom. So I was thinking this would be a good time just to ask you, what is it like, Herr Miller, to be back in front of students, because they came, as they often do, to school face to face. You don't need to get into current events, but you can. I mean, I just want to know what's your experience. How does it feel, Ross?
I will tell you that as somebody who is fervently looking towards the possibility of leaving the classroom, entering into retirement and going off to doing more, not more interesting things, but certainly different things, you know.
More interesting.
Yes.
Or are we kidding?
It is surprising how jazzed I still get at the onset of the school year as those kids start filing in, and there's a certain level of uncomfortability, if that's a word, on the part of the students. They're entering into new territory. They're entering into my territory, and therefore, at this juncture, they're just guests. Later on, they'll become more comfortable, and they'll make assumptions, and I'll correct them. But the thing is that right now there's still kind of a level of excitement every time the new year starts, and it for me it tends to do a lot to offset how silly the week before might have been. Okay. So last time we recorded something, we talked about the fact that the first week of school is actually just the teachers going through one synnabulistic meeting after another, and the drudgery that tends to both create but also leave on the psyche of the people in it. You know, my school district, though, or at least in my school, they do better than most. I mean, they keep the drudgery to a minimum, but they do actually leave a lot of time for teachers to be in their classroom working.
Good for
But
them.
there's something quite exhilarating about that first day, about those first sign of kids coming in. And as you sit there and try to think about, is that kid going to be the jerk? Is this kid going to be the one that asks random questions that have nothing to do with what we're talking about? Is that going to be the star of the show right there? So there's all this little tinges of excitement that come along with that.
Wow, the way you describe it is exciting for everybody, including the students, and they come into your territory, as you said. And when they walk in that door, they all look the same. When they walk out, they look scared.
They might be scared. I don't know. But I think, it's, and of course, you suggested that this might get topical, and certainly not topical to make any kind of points, but I would be remiss if I did not mention, one, the environment in which we are going back to school, with the Delta variant, which is a phrase I hoped we would never mention on this podcast, but there you go. And as of right now, no obligation for either students or teachers to wear masks. Nothing of the protocols that were in place last year in the form of quarantining, as far as contact tracing, as far as masks and shields and things of that nature. It's almost as if, because I teach teenagers, it's a different setup for the elementary folks, because those kids are not, they're not able to get any kind of vaccine yet. But at the high school level, there is certainly the idea that a lot of folks have gotten the vaccine. Not that that means much in the long term, because we're finding out more stuff about the durability of the vaccine. But, so it's all done in the backdrop with that in mind. And I think it's hard not to have that in your head somewhere. It's just not helpful to think about it too much.
So it's not the same as, say, 3 years ago or whenever the hell we had regular school.
No.
Is it a tension? Is there something else than previous years?
I think there's a tension, but I think there's also an expectation, the wonderment of what will happen. I think there's an assumption that something will happen. The question is, will it be something that derails the process? Will it be something that in the end proves not to be that impactful? I think the fact that a lot of people just don't know, I think that's part of what people are feeling. And then when you think about the elementary folks, you cannot help, or I certainly can't help, but to consider my daughter in the school system. My school system, as I said, is not requiring masks or anything like that, but yet they still have to kind of deal with this thing that's around us. And so it makes for interesting conversations around the dreaded faculty room table, and it certainly makes some very difficult conversations at home as well.
Well, I can imagine that, putting that aside, there are still some normal things that happen when students are in the room. And if you could flesh that out, do you do the activity where you ask them all what they did over the summer?
It's not a formal thing. It's more of a kind of an organic thing, but I find that, or what I usually will do is, if I say anything about it, and of course in front of a classroom, I will say something like, okay, who went the furthest over the summer break? I don't need to hear about someone who hung out with their Nana in Oklahoma, for however long they did so. I just throw it out there just to kind of have an idea of where these people are going, and then I transition. I really don't spend hardly any time on it whatsoever. I mean, if they say something particularly interesting, I may ask a follow-up question, but normally that's the extent to what I'm interested in hearing about, is just how far they went. And then we say, okay, it's time to get to work, and then you start working. And
well, that's good. So you can say, yeah, you won. Keep moving, but you spare the class and yourself of hearing, 30 times, I stayed home and played video games. Really? What games did you play? And then you'd have to sit and listen for about a half hour.
What level did you reach?
Well, that's good. So you've kind of minimized that, but it's still a good way to get to know them is, you kind of talked about these students coming into focus. You have almost this, not a preconceived, but you have to make some judgment just by the way they walk into the space. What do you do to help them come into focus, in that first date?
Well, I think the first thing I want to do is I want to get them talking on point as quickly as possible. And so, for example, in the world history class I'm teaching, this is the first time in about 10 years I've taught AP world history. So the very first question I ask them is, what is your definition of a society? What is your definition of a civilization? What does that include? What would it preclude? What is not necessary, but it might have, all this other stuff. And then you think about the character and the traits of a civilization. And then you ask, where does law fit into that? Where does rules and regulations? Because that's not typically something that somebody will bring up. They'll talk about, well, there's schools, there's roads, there's churches, or, whatever. There's language, there's a more or less a shared direction. So I will bring up something like law and rules. And then the question can go from there based on how they answer that question. And then, my colleague does a great activity with Hammurabi's code. Hammurabi was a Fertile Crescent ruler back in the day, often cited as being responsible for the first codified set of laws. And of course, typical what you might think of Old Testament times, there's a lot of killing and the chopping off of hands if you steal stuff. It's a pretty brutal system. But then it gets into very interesting conversations like, what is the purpose of law? Is it to promote good behavior, or is it to punish bad behavior? And you start getting into these kind of questions that, one, they have some semblance of understanding of, because they know about the notion of rules. They know about the notion of legal rigmarole, but they may not have thought about it in terms of how you define the society. So what you do is you take a kernel of what they do know to try to broach and to bring up something that they probably never have thought of, but is key to understanding something like early civilizations. And so for me, one of the ways that I try to bring into focus these kids is to see how they respond to these kind of questions. How do they answer? Are their answers logical? Are they articulate? Are they rambling like I can be at times? Can they?
Yes, you are all.
So I find that that's a good way of starting to get an idea about the kids.
It sounds like you're jumping into history right away. You're not, giving them all these procedures right out of the gates. Because in their minds, they also want to know, how are we graded, what's expected, all that. Does that ever work its way into that first class period?
It does, but I never go into detail about it. I say, listen, this is what you're going to be assessed on in this class. This is how we do those assessments. In the AP class, we time a lot of things. And so for me, it's a procedural question, and one I don't feel the need to spend a lot of time on. I figure a lot of that stuff will answer itself as we go through the course. I'm more interested in, certainly I'm introducing myself. It would be rude not to. I'm the teacher. Certainly it would be perplexing if I didn't say anything about what the class was that they were about to endeavor to engage in. But then outside of that, I think it's important to jump right in. I'm not going to give them a bunch of rules. I don't have a bunch of rules in my class. For God's sakes, these people are, 16, 17 years old. We should be able to dispense with that formality. And I just ask them to act like human beings. And, let's see how you do with that first before I start putting more restrictions on you. But I try to assume the sale, and then I deal with knuckleheads as I come across them. But no, it's not a very restrictive kind of regulating first class.
Okay, so that's in alignment with the motivational theory which we espouse. rather than getting into these controlling practices, which is establish a power structure, but minimizing that. And I like what you said about assuming the sale.
Right.
A lot of teachers assume the opposite. Here's what happens when you do this and this and this. What if we do this? Oh yeah, that happens.
Then we will pillory you in front of the school and have little children throw things at you.
Any more hypotheticals? Well, do you have 60-minute classes or 90?
And well, I have two kinds. We have what is referred to as an alternating block schedule with a daily first and last period, but then the 3 periods in the middle rotate between two schedules. And so the daily classes are about 45 minutes, and then the block schedule classes are about an hour and a half.
Okay, so I'm trying to picture this at the end of that class period that you just described. The bell rings. They still have bells, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
We like our bells in public school.
The bells need to go away. I think they just stir everybody up, but I think we were at a school where the teachers just independently let them out.
Yeah.
And you get some early arrivals and some late ones. And so I can
still got 30 minutes. What are you doing? What's she let us out? Did she? Yeah.
I like that. But there's not much of a transition. Are you one of the teachers that stands in the hallway by the door in between classes while there's a passing period?
Yeah, I mean, it's an expectation that we, if nothing else, but to be visible. And there goes some of the control elements of school. I use it though as just an ability to be able to greet folks as they come into the door. Ask them, how they are, and and I tell there's several things I tell my students on the first day. One of them is that I will be friendly, but I will not be your friend. So please don't confuse the two. But part of being friendly is just saying hello to people when they come into your sphere. So part of the reason I do it is just to greet my students. Part of it is also to be of help, particularly in the beginning of the school year, because you got a bunch of freshmen, really upperclassmen as well, who are being tasked with going to a classroom in a part of the building they've never been to before. So inevitably there's some directions that have to be given. So,
and then there's a transition, and you repeat with the next group. Imagine during the first few days, it wears you out, being on your feet, being on stage, as it were. What does it feel like after teaching a day or two?
I remember an interview with Simon Pegg, who's a British comedian, and he was talking about the idea, because now he's gotten into acting, but he had, for a time there, I think he was flirting with going back on doing stand-up. And he said, the problem with being out of stand-up for a while and then trying to get back into it is that you have to be match fit. You really have to be in tuned with the rhythms of being back on stage in front of people, and that does not naturally come to you. You have to kind of work your way into that status. And I sort of think of teaching in much the same way. I mean, we just spent the last summer, granted, I might have been learning stuff and I might have been doing things and, what have you. What I was not doing was projecting my voice for seven hours a day, being on my feet, interacting, being on, as it were. And all of that creates a certain level of exhaustion. And all of that requires that you have to get back into being match fit, as Mr. Pegg had the phrase he had coined. And so yeah, part of that, is being able to get back into the groove of things, to be conditioned to be on your feet that long, to talking that much. And we talked about it earlier. One of the first things that start to go when you start the new year is your voice, because you just haven't been projecting it in that way. I'm trying to be conscientious about how much I'm projecting my voice, just to kind of offset or mitigate that effect. But nevertheless, it's going to happen at some point. Your throat's going to get scratchy, and you're just not going to feel well. And you think you got COVID, and then pretty soon you just it comes with all kinds of concerns. But that's typically how it breaks down.
Okay,
how did it for you? Was it very dissimilar, or was it
No, I mean, I tended to be more friendly than you with students.
No, I'm friendly. I'm just not friends. That's a
Well,
big difference. So.
but I mean, some of them are students that you've known. I mean, who are in the building, and so
Oh yeah.
so there's a little bit more closeness and socializing, with them. I really enjoyed that. Always did. But as far as wearing out, yeah, I mean, I taught German, and it's all talking in this guttural tone,
Right.
and that definitely wears you out. Where you have to kind of plan in little breaks where you're not talking
right
so much. But that's hard on the first day or two. They say that if you speak in a higher voice, it's less strain. So I think on Monday you should do a real high voice, affect a British accent really high.
Yeah, so definitely. Children, I'm afraid I'm going to have to affect a British accent for the remainder of the year.
Come on,
I'm sure this
Ross.
might cause some confusion and quarrelsome questions, but I trust that you'll be able to overcome the situation, and we'll be able to go forthwith into the great stories of U.S. or world history.
It's going to be great. Just believe me, you have to do this now. I like to lead you in the right direction early on. You'll be much more popular with the students.
I don't trust any direction you try to lead me on. I'm sure you remember this. The first time I ever asked your opinion about what I should do, I looked at you and I said, "Would you do that?" And he goes, "Oh no, I wouldn't do that, but I think you should."
That sounds just like me.
Yeah. Jeez almighty. That's why you can't be trusted.
No, I can't. I assume that you're not spending your whole day with high school kids, but you actually get to interact, sometime with faculty. How was that during this first week?
Well, the first week and really the first couple of weeks, you basically try to stay out of people's way because people are building groundworks for whatever class they're doing or what have you. And so I think it's important. I certainly would never go into someone's class right now. I think that's just mean, because you're a teacher and the students are still trying to figure out the scene in the classroom. And you interject a unannounced, unrecognized observer into the mix, and you're likely to cause more problems than it's worth going in. I think it's easy when you've been at it for a while and it's like December and there's a fairly good relationship between the teacher and the student, hopefully, then someone coming into the classroom is not going to throw everything off kilter, but rather students will take it more in stride. So not that I have to wait till December, but I just think in the first couple of weeks, I try to give the teachers some space. I still see them in between classes and before school, after school, during lunch, that sort of thing. And
so you're talking as a department head, because that is part of your role.
It's part of, yes.
Yeah. Other teachers don't just drop in on each other unannounced, I guess.
One would hope.
Yeah. That we're just fighting for our lives in there, somebody comes in. But you do, I mean, you mentioned your role as a department head. You are working with some younger teachers. How are they handling this type of a year?
It was more, there's a greater level of uncertainty last year, I think, while this year presents its own problems because of various reasons. I think last year was more problematic. And the difficulty there was that the problem laid in individual differences, not a question of pedagogical methodology or what is right or what is wrong to do in a classroom. And so, and truly, I mean, I think anybody who has experienced this over the last year and a half or so, going on 2 years now, I think what you find is that the difference between people is how they assess risk. And that's not anything that I feel comfortable commenting on, and certainly not suggesting a correction in, because it's an individual thing. Everybody has life experiences. Those life experiences dictates how they react to things, and that includes trials and tribulations. And so to that end, the greatest worry that a lot of folks had last year, and to a certain degree this year, has more to do with things outside the classroom. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be endeavoring to try to do this year is to try to get people to step away from technology. I think technology kind of overtook everything in the last year and change, if you consider 2020 or 2020 after spring break. But because I think there is a need to kind of reclaim the discipline, to reclaim the art of teaching. And the art of teaching certainly doesn't preclude technology, but it certainly does not require that it be an essence of every single thing we do. And last year it was damn near a part of every single thing we did. So I think part of the focus that I had this year was to try to reclaim the job. And that means re-engaging with students. That means getting them off their damn phones and laptops and Chromebooks or whatever it is else they have, and try to find ways to engage them one-on-one, try to find ways to engage them directly, rather than always taking out a Chromebook or always taking out a phone. I'm just not sure that's interesting. It can be interesting to them. They spend all the rest of their day on the phone. Even the kids that are even the most bleary-eyed, gaze-looking kids realize that something is wrong with how much they're on their phone. I mean, I hear it from the students when we have conversations about it. So I think one aspect is to try to get teachers to step off from the technology, and hopefully I can maybe convince some folks to do that.
Well, it might be a little bit easier. You're not having to multitask and record a Zoom while your lecture or whatever, the whole class, and have these heads on a screen who are absent. I know a lot of schools did that, or you pre-recorded something for the kids who are home. So at least up at this point, it sounds a little bit more normal.
Well, and therein lies some of the challenges beyond that, So our district, the district that I work in, does not require masks this year. And of course, I teach high school kids, so that's a much potentially easier proposition to stomach than, say, what's happening at the elementary school level. So kiddos who cannot get a vaccine of any sort. And so there is a concern about what the long-term effect of that is, although last year there was a lot of concerns. There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth about what a potential in-person school year would look like. And thankfully, the dire predictions and prognostications of some folks never really came true. I'm a big believer in what Jim McKay said that fateful day he was reporting on the 72 Olympics situation, that our greatest hopes and worst fears are seldom realized. And so I believe that it certainly doesn't benefit us to focus on the negative, and certainly not to focus on an extreme negative, because it doesn't typically tend to happen. It's not saying it can't, but it's also not a lot you can do to control it. So you try to limit those conversations.
It's a pretty serious tone when you bring up the 1972 Olympics and the Israeli national team and all that happened. But other than that, you're in a great mood and a great space, and it's good, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, it's good.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I don't know if we can end this on a happy tone, but it just gets better, right? You get, actually getting to know the students about the time you learn their names, things start to click a little bit. It's a little bit more personal. You're not having to guess or look at a seating chart or something. So it always happens. But you asked me about my experience. When you walk into the classroom the first time of a year, you're thinking, how can I do this again? Because you had a summer, you're kind of bracing for it. And then once you're in front of that group, it just clicks in, and it's like you were made to do this, and you've done it so many times. You're right back where you need to be. And so that's I think a good feeling, and a little bit of elation as you go through the day. It's exhausting, but that elation, I do remember that. And I think that's in the back of people's minds why they come back, because I know in the spring, every spring, I would wonder, is this my last year? I mean, that's without exception every year.
Yes.
And then as the summer goes, it gets even more bleak, and then you make it through. But once you see the students and realize that you're really good at this, that goes a long ways.
Well, it's like most things. The anticipation tends to be more dreadful than the reality, and I think you can envision all kinds of worst case scenarios going into something. But then once it happens and once it's in motion and it can't be stopped, it's a little bit like, going downhill on a bicycle that doesn't have the chain attached. There's a certain level of freedom you can allow yourself, because, now it can't be stopped and it won't be stopped. And so, so for me, I think once the anticipation is over and the reality sets in, then you can kind of more enjoy it for the moment. And I think that's where perhaps, I hope, some teachers are.
Well, you present an image of spinning out of control down a hill between now and June, and that's a wonderful image. And probably screaming, or certainly not smiling happily, joyfully.
But it's exciting to be at the onset. I mean, it's one of the things, who gets excited about being at the onset of studying math? I mean, that just seems ridiculous. I don't buy it. I don't think anyone's happy upstairs. Our math and science department is upstairs, and I don't even go up there. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies every time I do. But I think at the onset of studying history, the onset of studying the life of people, or the fortunes or misfortunes of a country, it's an exciting place to be.
You've just
you feel like a little bit like Friedrich's character, the wanderer, gazing over fog and mountains, or whatever the hell, that the sea of fog or what have you.
I don't know what you're talking about. I just know you insulted math teachers and science teachers who have the same mission you do, and they get giddy about it. But either way, you're back, and I know. I mean, we can say this: your years of teaching ahead of you are growing shorter. So this could be one of your last years potentially. But do you get a little bit philosophical about that?
I think. Well, I mean, one of the things that you're always having to fight are the emotions of the moment, and the Chinese philosophers might have opined about the importance of doing nothing in order to negate the effects of what's around you. But I certainly think that, when I get philosophical, when I sense problems arising, when I sense controversies brewing, that tends to be where I will step back. In class, I am very different than what I'm like in person. In person, I'm much more laid back, much quieter. But in the class, I take on this persona for the purposes of teaching my class, not to affect something not true or unrealistic, but to simply try to find a better way as far as engaging people. I'm a bit too quiet, in person, or I tend to be. I certainly don't have to be, but there's a bit of a facade there. And so, but as far as everything else goes, you just kind of take it as it comes, and you've seen it all before. There's nothing terribly surprising. And then what you get philosophical about is being able to understand that controversies are transient, and this too shall pass, and just try not to worry about it.
Well, that's a good way to leave it.
Yeah.
Boss. Try not to worry about it.
It's horrible advice, because it's horribly unhelpful, especially someone who is gripped by worrying about it, and they don't have the context or the perspective or the bigger picture about what this may or may not amount to. Then they just assume the worst case scenario. And to me, I think my time in the classroom has taught me that that's not likely to happen.
Well, this could be the rest of our podcast. I'll just ask one question. I'll say, "Hey, Miller, how are you doing?" And you'll go on and on and on about it. but I suspect that there's a, we talked about this before, there's a rhythm to a school year. And the beginning has a rhythm, and then the real learning kicks in until there's a break, and then you get into that nonsense of vacation, break. But that's another thing that sustains us as teachers. We really like the structure and the seasons of the year.
Much like baseball.
Baseball? What do you mean? Baseball has one season.
Baseball as a sign of the coming of spring and the ultimate arrival of fall. It's a season. It's a sport definitely marked by characteristic of the changing of seasons.
And right now we're in the blast furnace. At least they used to call it that when it wasn't an indoor stadium.
The dog days of summer.
Well, I think that as a teacher, these aren't dog days yet. They happen a little bit later.
A little bit later.
Let's hope. Otherwise, you really need to rethink this.
Well, I'm really do another podcast.
Yeah,
I can't believe it's September, and I was already just saying, "Oh, with it," just.
We have a 3-day weekend coming up, Labor Day.
What's the answer to the test? Oh, who cares? Just relax. Just read Harry Potter, for God's sakes.
Oh boy,
leave me alone.
Leave me alone. All right, Herr Miller. I'm going to say goodbye on that and wish you a happy week and Godspeed.
And have a great week to you, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.